Okay, so everyone in this room at some point in their lives has been a target of judgment, categorization, or offense. We as humans, we thrive off of this judgment, and we suffer at the hands of it as well. For example, if you're hired after a very impressionable interview, or maybe you found closure in a particular religion, or you received a scholarship for a distinguishable characteristic, obviously these are benefits of being judged, but more often than not, judgment is used with a negative connotation for things such as you're rejected from a job for looking a certain way, or you are pushed around for acting differently, or you're mocked for your beliefs. And this judgment often escalates to things that we call witch hunts, where basically we feel uncomfortable with the way a large group of people are, so we go and we try to eradicate this uncomfortable feeling. And judgment has caused such travesties as the Salem witch trials, the Holocaust, segregation, the Red Scare, the Stanford prison experiment, U.S. terrorism, and more recently, homophobia in Russia. This fear is what drives people to make assumptions and label others, and it's this kind of ignorance that leads to phobias and taking negative action towards a certain population of people. So what we're going to talk about today is how the anti-gay laws in Russia have not been given enough attention by the entire world, and how this can lead to more violations in human rights on an already opposed country. So first we're going to discuss the law and the non-legal consequences of the law, and then we're going to talk about why the problem continues to be an issue, not just in the country, but around the world, and why nothing's being done about it. So before we get into why the problem exists, let's discuss the law and the non-legal consequences.
So in order to comprehend the current situation in Russia, we need to understand what the law states, the legal repercussions of the law, and the non-legal actions that some citizens have taken. So the law states that propaganda is the act of distributing information among minors that is aimed at creating of non-sexual attitudes, makes non-traditional sexual relationships attractive, equates the social value of non-traditional and traditional sexual relations, and creates an interest in non-traditional and sexual relations. There are many fines for this law violation. For individuals, it is $120 to $150. For groups or companies, it can range from $24,000 to $30,000. And for foreign violators, it is $1,500 to $3,100, and a possible 15-day jail sentence before deportation. One of the first violations was made by Dutch filmmakers who had interviewed a minor for their film. They were said to be spreading homosexual propaganda to a minor, and they were detained for 8 hours and fined $100. This case was denied by the court in Russia, and because it was said that the minor was already self-identified as gay. Another violation was made by 15 gay rights activists who were celebrating International Coming Out Day. The anti-gay demonstrators had arrived onto the site and chanted Russian Orthodox prayers. Fights broke out, and police and homophobes joined together to break up the action. A pro-gay demonstrator was said to have tried to pull out a rainbow-colored flag and was forced to the ground before her flag was ripped from her. Some non-legal ramifications of the law have been seen via anti-gay activists and violent hate crimes. Being outed in a small village or city in Russia often means death for some people. Occupy Pedophilia is an anti-gay group who are known for their violent and filed attacks on gay individuals. The group has posted approximately 15 videos of such attacks. The latest video featured a woman with an assault rifle. She was claiming to be on a safari hunting for pedophiles and gays. Suspected homosexual individuals are usually lured via social networking to isolated areas in which the group proceeds to humiliate and harm the individual. Each video contains different people but the same outline. A man meets another man over a dating website. They set up a meeting. The man is then greeted by young Russians who then humiliate and abuse him. They force him to pose with dildos, painting his face and pouring urine over his head. A cell phone records it, but it cuts off right as the group begins kicking and punching him. We should give this more attention because the law has not only brought with it legal repercussions, but non-legal ones as well. Now that we have a basic understanding of the law and its results, we will discuss why it is a problem and why there hasn't been domestic or international intervention.
So very little internal and external action is being done to halt the progression of these anti-homosexual legal and non-legal actions. The Russian populace seems to have a deep-rooted disdain for homosexuality and remains strong from generation to generation. Domestic progress in Russia's overall stance on homosexuality has been on the decline as of recently. Russia's population has an almost 4-to-1 dislike against homosexuality, which makes it very difficult, obviously, to sway the population if the majority is against it. Excuse me. This is a chart the Russian population was asked if homosexuality should be accepted in society, and 74% were against it, and 16% were for it. The Russian, from 2007 to 2013, there's actually been a 4% decrease in homosexual favorability in Russia's population. Here's the 4% decrease. One survey shows that Russians from as low as 18 years old are barely any more tolerant towards homosexuality than those 50 and over. This shows the age differences and the people old for acceptance of homosexuality in Russian society. One of Putin's many laws passed in 2012 banned homosexual pride parades for the next 100 years, and it was supported by 88% of the Russian populace, which is the supporting majority. The Russian government has strategically worded its law as to not legally violate any human rights laws. For this reason, foreign action to resist these laws are few and far between. The United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights requires all governments that signed to respect the rights of the individual. These rights include the right to life, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. However, due to the wording of Article 621, which is Russia's anti-gay law, Russia is not violating any aspect of this document. For this reason, there is very little legally that anyone can do from outside of Russia. Protesters from all around the world have tried. These protesters include Sweden, the United States, Germany, just to name a few. They have banded together, held marches, rallies, and protests against Putin and his traditional laws and the anti-gay document. We will now bring a presentation over to Rob to wrap it up.
So, overall, we have discussed the law and the non-legal actions going on in Russia as far as their problems with homosexuality, and why it still remains a problem today and why nothing's being done about it. And even though Russia is halfway across the world and it might seem too distant to consider, it's still incredibly important, because who's not to say that this couldn't spread somewhere else? Other countries could start taking on these sort of actions too. And it's this kind of fear that's been oppressing people for decades, but only now the government has taken up legal action against it and stripped these people of their basic human rights. It's this judgment that's led Russia to where it is currently, and if we let these witch hunts continue, it can have greater consequences, not only for Russia, but for the entire world.
Questions?
You guys mentioned that Occupy pedophilia thing and how they go after gays. Do they consider gay people pedophiles, or is it like two separate? They do. Yeah. Okay.
So, and I was a little confused by that. How does that work? Because you almost suggested that it was kind of this website that lured homosexuals into it, like a situation where then they would get abused. Is that how it works? Is it a luring kind of process, or?
I don't know if there's just a specific website just for that, but I know that they sign up for the website and then lure them in. But I don't know if the website is just made for that.
So, but is the process what they kind of somehow solicit homosexuals, like with the false intent of what, maybe meeting somebody or something of that nature? Is that how it works?
It's more that they use already established social networking sites like maybe Facebook or dating websites to say like, hey, I'm a gay man, I'm looking for a companion, and then when the person gets there, it's more of an ambush than a date.
Okay. And is it? I mean, I know you gave a couple of examples, but is that fairly prevalent in Russian society for like the social media to be used that way and those kinds of actions to take place?
I would say so. Occupy Pedophilia is just one group. It's just the biggest group, and they already have 15 or more videos online, and they don't tape every encounter that they have. So this group already has 15 or more, plus the smaller groups. So
And are the tapes allowed to stay out online? I mean, does the government do anything to try to prohibit the viewing of the tapes or anything?
They haven't been taken down yet, so we would assume that they would be allowed to stay up online.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, Joel, when you were going through the examples, I think it was the example of the foreign crew who interviewed the young teen. You mentioned something. It sounded like the court threw that case out.
Mm-hmm. They denied it because the locals around that knew the minor had said that he already identified as gay.
So if that's the case, that almost sounds like then the courts are being reasonable with these kinds of incidents or cases. And what I'm hearing you say is that the government is kind of turning its head against these kinds of cases. So that sounded a little contradictory to me. So, I mean, are the courts, are they trying to uphold kind of anti-harassment or hate crime kind of laws? I'm assuming there's some kind of hate crime laws in place or something. Are they trying to protect as much as possible under the law that they can, or are they just turning their head to this stuff?
From what I've read, it seems like the courts are working within the population ones, because I did read, I think in 2012 there was a law passed that made it illegal for any sort of parades or anything of that nature for like the next 100 years. They're banned or something. And I think there was like 88% of the population voted for it. So the courts just ruled in that favor.
Okay, so the courts are favorable towards the anti-gay position. But legally, it sounds like when cases are brought in, they're being fair, or at least...
I think that since the minor they interviewed already self-identified as gay, that the Dutch filmmakers didn't like propagandize non-traditional relationships to the minor, so they couldn't legally.
So legally, they couldn't hold. Okay. I'm sorry.
If he's already self-identified gay, then any legal action would be taken against him as opposed to being taken against the Dutch filmmakers?
It didn't say, but I could look at it for you.
Because that would, I mean, again, how could he self-identify if it's so strict, right? I mean that again, I'm trying to understand how horrible the society is, and how bad the treatment is that's going on.
If I remember correctly, that one case happened a few years ago, and the law that we are presenting on just got passed a few months ago.
So you're saying it's gotten worse
Yeah.
and
So
stuff?
I,
Oh,
I
okay.
would say that it's progressed to be legally, they probably would have been held responsible if it had happened this year, but since it happened a few years ago before the law was passed, I would say that's why.
So you're suggesting that if it happened today, they might not have been excused in the courts as easily? Okay, okay. And Ebony, you were showing numbers, and at some point you just said this shows something, but I wasn't quite sure what it was, the point that it was supporting. I could see the numbers, like at some point you said this shows a 4% decrease.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just curious. What's the purpose of those numbers?
That non-favorability of homosexuality being accepted in society is decreasing, while around the rest of the world it seems to be increasing. That was my point. I didn't say it effectively.
Okay, and that's decreasing throughout the population.
Yeah.
In
the
all,
majority of the population, there's been a 40% decrease of people who are against it now.
Okay, so that means anybody coming into any type of legal or social kind of role is most likely going to have the same kind of sentiments as the current government. Is that what you're suggesting?
I suppose.
Okay, okay. How much can we trust those numbers?
How much can you trust any number?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm just wondering what's the source of those numbers. I mean, I'm just where did they come from? Who?
Honestly, it was just a quick search of sources who showed their results visually. So we may have to research it more.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious how much of the population they surveyed.
Yeah.
What part of the population they surveyed? You know, whether there's any differences as far as how much we can kind of really rely on those numbers to kind of give us that sense.
Yeah.
So I was just curious as who did it. Okay. Any other questions? Well, you guys love just trying to make me the pain in the you know what back here. Okay, that's fine.